Come back when you're a little, richer.
Welcome back, nerds. Fino here. Hankyo is here, and with it, we can recruit an old enemy. It's Limbo the Himbo, or as he's otherwise known, Ashiya Douman. Douman is a 5-star alter ego, and he's a limited servant, so if you miss him now, you'll be left waiting. Not too long though. He'll come back as a part of 2023's summer event. But as for the man himself, let's see if this preening pervert intends to save the quick card type or set it on fire for his own amusement. Leading off Douman's kit is Ridicule Cat, which is a petri dish of AoE debuffs to attack, defense, and delayed chances to stun and skill seal. Also a light curse as a bit of seasoning. In most applications, this will be your least important skill, but if you plan to get up to any solo shenanigans, it can buy you precious time, so try not to ignore it. Next up is Onyx Life. Among other things, it gives a 2-stack Guts, which is very unusual. Gives Douman a lot of bullshit insurance if you bring him to challenge quests. Then there's the other half, a crit buff for evil and or chaotic teammates with chaotic evil allies doubling up. At one hit, it's 50% for 3 turns, which is pretty impressive. As Douman is chaotic evil himself, he gets the full benefits of his own skill set. But before we get too much into that, let's look at Douman's final skill. Douman's curse is an 80% battery with another evil/chaotic buff, with each providing 20% attack. It also puts a fairly substantial curse on each enemy, capping at 2k damage. In combination with the mana loading append skill, Douman will be able to NP immediately, regardless of which craft essence he's using. That said, he doesn't get back enough to 3-turn farm without some sort of K-scope action or bonus charger, so be wary of that. Untethered quick farmers aren't a thing just yet, at least not on NA. I'll get back to Douman's farming a bit later, but let's talk about the chaotic evil stuff. First of all, Douman himself is chaotic evil and is therefore a valid target for his own double buffs. If you wanted to meme, you could even run him with himself to get quadruple buffs. Now the sheer range of servants Douman can affect can be daunting, but I have some pointers to help you decide when to use him. One of the things you have to watch out for with Douman is that while he provides a lot to potential allies, he's missing a few key things. First of all, he doesn't give his teammates any charge. That's why there's no commonly used Limbo system. But if you're running a Douman crit team into a boss encounter, you don't necessarily need batteries. That and a sufficiently strong Douman could deal with trash mobs himself. No, what you need to ask yourself is where your stars and card type buffs are coming from. If the team you want to run can't do either efficiently, then you should reconsider. Stars you can get around with dumb CEs like Golden Catches the Carp and continuous effects like 2030. But the card type buffs put you in a position of either running such a buff via craft essence or narrowing down your pool of attackers to ones that have arts, buster, or quick effects. Running through the whole list is a bit pointless, but some choice highlights include Ruler Moriarty, Summer Maeve, Punished Miyu, Summer Bibi, and Salieri. Chiome I'll get back to in just a second, but aside from her, the common theme among these servants is that they can make their own stars to some degree, and they pack their own card type buffs. Now you might think it's a bit strange that I'm including Buster and Art servants in this conversation, but what you need to understand about Douman is that while he's technically a quick servant, he's not a quick supporter. None of his team buffs are card type related after all. If you're willing to deal with Archer Moriarty's messy fundamentals, you can run him too. His ability to make allies evil means you can run him with any number of chaotic servants to let them get the full benefits of Douman's double buffs. Really, Douman is a bit of a choose your own adventure when it comes to team building. You're not even strictly required to use chaotic evil teammates. Each one of those is still a 50% buff to crit and a standard attack buff. Now whether it's effective or not depends on your ingredients, but depending on your CEs and servants, you could whip up something unusual to get the job done. But it wouldn't do to get down and dirty with team building without the last piece of the puzzle, and that brings us to Douman's noble phantasm. Mad Maelstrom is an AoE quick attack with chance to kill. Douman actually has a passive that increases his instant kill chance, so you could use him to take out bronze trash mobs and extend the range of viable farming nodes. The best part is the instant kill happens after the damage goes through, so you get some charge back no matter what. If only they do the same for Nitocris. Also of note is the combo of a 1k curse as a standard effect, and a curse amplifier tied to overcharge. The extra 25% damage going from 1 to 200% overcharge might be worth considering depending on the specific encounter. This curse amp is what gives him an intriguing synergy with Chiome, who stacks curses with irregular cards and has an amplifier of her own. It'll be like the good old days, just Limbo, Paraiso, and that fucking bird from the old Musashi monologues. Speaking of birds, here's a fun fact. Limbo can't be turned into a pig. Maybe the man's too cursed for that kind of X. But back to the point, curse stacking might be fun, and debuff stacking in general is a lot less terrible than it used to be. Trying to keep uptime on Archer Tomoe's NP was a losing proposition. But even now, you should be aware that against an unfortified enemy, you'd still probably get more damage from your crits or by using a double support team instead. No, where debuff stacking shines is against enemies with unremovable, unignorable protection effects like the whales in Imaginary Scramble, if you wanted to fight them out of order and not go back to the free quest mines. But if you're feeling down, I've got some good news. Down the road, curse stacking gets another cool trick in the form of a contagious curse. If its carrier dies, it spreads to the other enemies and gets a curse amp each time this happens. Cool trick and great for boss fights with a lot of respawning trash mobs, but that's a discussion for 2024. Before I move on, let me touch on the lady who stacks curses on herself. There's surface level synergy between Van Gogh and Douman. She's chaotic evil, so she gets all of his buffs, and she can even steal his curses as fuel for her skills. But when you look under the hood, you've got some problems. First of all, Van Gogh can already generate crit and to a lesser degree attack buffs for herself, and she's capable of stacking the crit effect if you play her cards right. Second and more importantly, Douman's curses are just too good. Douman redirects curses as is, so that 2k curse he put on every enemy, that's Van Gogh's problem now. Due to her passive, she can't die from the curses themselves, but what she can die from is having her health reduced to 1 from curses and then getting chipped out by a random enemy, so buyer beware. You know, it feels like Douman can do a little bit of everything, huh? As an alter ego, he can already fight any standard enemy that's not a knight class. He even has an anti-alter ego append, which is niche but lets you run him in that neutral encounter if you're so inclined. And being an alter ego has another perk in that ascending him is very straightforward. He only needs assassin and caster pieces and monuments. The early levels of his skills are also pretty generous on this front, though the latter ones call for hand kill materials among other inconvenient items. Douman is a solid generalist, but this isn't without its drawbacks. His team buffs might be spicy, but consider this. His cooldowns are on the long side, 6 to 7 turns even at max level, and they push 9 early on. Let's say you're running Douman as a support for a chaotic evil ally. One of the ways you'd normally handle this drawback is to equip him with a taunt CE, maybe even run him as a level 70 esports servant if you have a surplus. But remember that wonderful 2-stack guts from earlier? It's tied to his best supportive skill, the crit buff. This makes killing Douman exceptionally inconvenient. You need something like Good Poster Girl to do it over multiple turns. Either that or swap him out with a Mystic Code. But having to run Plug Suit just to get rid of Limbo does not feel great. It also precludes other options like Anniversary Blonde for a burst of stars. You might think to give him a ride on the Chengong Express, but I wouldn't recommend that. Contrary to how he plays, Chengong is not in fact chaotic evil. Chaotic good, so he still gets half the buffs, but the old Gongmeister doesn't exactly need a crit buff. He's more of a giver than a taker on that front. The equipment that you give Douman is going to depend a lot on your configuration, but I've got some general pointers. Main attacker builds can run Traces of Christmas's Past for consistent value, Black Rail for explosive damage, and K-Scope if you want to loop with just him and 2 Scotties. As for supportive options, I've mentioned a few earlier. Golden Carp, 2030, Poster Girl. The one CE I'd avoid is actually his Bond CE. It's a version of his chaotic evil buff but for NP damage. Given that Douman, A, needs to be on the field for it to work, and B, he doesn't give his allies any charge, it's hard to get value out of it. And you shouldn't run it on main attacker builds because Bond CEs have atrocious stats. As for command codes, I personally like the flat star options. Holy Knight's Aurora is out right now, but eventually we'll get ones that give stars and curse. Beguiling Amulet and Knight of the Abyssal Sanctuary are ones to keep an eye out for. For main attacker builds, you should also consider absorption modifiers like the one bearing Fortune. If you want to know what the future has in store for Douman, it's actually good news. He gets an indirect buff in the form of Summer Scotty, who gains star income, stars on demand, and buster supporting skills in addition to quick buffs. Better yet, she still works as a loop enabler, meaning you don't need your own Douman to run him as a farmer. As long as you have one of each Scotty, you can just bum a Douman off your friends list. It's hilarious. But farming aside, having the star effects and buster buff means you can run Scotty in those chaotic evil teams to get even more value on your buff target. She herself is only chaotic, but she's there to give buffs, not do the heavy lifting. Douman isn't a game breaker. He, like a lot of other quick servants, is off in his own world separate from the mainstream meta. Almost like some sort of Epic of Remnant. It's a pretty fun world though, unlike Shimosa, and you can unlock all sorts of strange yet functional teams by using him. He's also a pretty robust generalist, so if you're a new player and you get him off a lucky roll, he can do a lot of lifting. So if you go for him, you'll get something for your troubles. But if you miss your shot and end up with the Banner's Consolation Prize, I have a guide for him right here. Like and sub if you found this video useful, and come watch me on Twitch where I stream every weekend. Also today, because, if I edit this in time, I'll be rolling for Douman. You won't want to miss it. See you there.